Hello, and welcome to today's discussion, which is titled Want Better Decisions? Manage Your Time and Attentions. So today's discussion is about making better decisions. There is a spreadsheet in the Learning Suite folder that accompanies this presentation. It's called Creating Slack. And it allows you to get a sense of where you are today having Slack in your life. The instrument measures 6 areas of your life, and you can tell how well you're doing. Physical slack, things like sleep, eating, and exercise. Emotional slack, how peaceful and calm you feel. Intellectual slack, reading, staying current on events and other things that challenge our brains. Relational slack, being aware of and being with other people. Spiritual slack, your relationship with the divine. And time slack, how rushed or pressured you feel. So after you complete the instrument, the last tab in the spreadsheet is called Gap Analysis. And as you go to that sheet, you'll see the 6 areas and you'll see the 3 dimensions under each area. And you want to look for the lowest score or the most negative score, because that would be the area where you can get the most bang for your buck, where the gap between having slack and not having slack is the smallest, and you want to work in those areas. So let's move on and let's talk about, as a way of introduction, the poverty cycle of the rich. When you run into people who are doing very well, business professionals and others, one of the things they'll often complain about is how busy they are. They always seem to be running late, making excuses for never being on time, and always complaining about how busy their lives are. You'll also find that these people have a very difficult time focusing for more than just a few moments or the shortest time on events or issues. It seems that we have ADD as a society, and people tend to get distracted really, really early. The final characteristic that you'll find these people have, and all of us have, are plates that are overly filled. We have too many activities going on. We have so much that we're trying to accomplish that it's really kind of ridiculous looking as it does like an overfilled Thanksgiving plate. You can tie all these together and think about how they relate to each other. So let's start with capacity poverty. We already have too many things to do, which induces its own time poverty, because now we never have enough time to spend on the activities or do anything well enough. So we have time poverty, and that then leads to, because we don't have time, we can't pay attention. We can't dive deeply into the details of what's going on, which then further eliminates our ability to move capacity off our plate. And so you see the cycle goes round and round. And it turns out that the rich are actually poor. So let's talk about managing time. The first thing that you want to recognize is time is like money, and there are 4 particular ways in which time is like money and how you can learn to allocate it more effectively. First, time is consumable. Improve the shining moments. A moment gone is a moment wasted. All of those things tend to be true. Once time elapses, you can never get it back again. Similar to money that you spend on consumables. Once it's used, it's gone. Time, like money, can be borrowed. How do we borrow time? We borrow time from the future. And we all tend to go to 3 particular lenders of choice. Who are they? Well, the first lender of choice is we borrow from future projects. We know that we have something with a start date and an end date, and as soon as that end date comes, we have another project that we have to start, and it too will have its own end date. So what happens when we delay and when we can't get a project done on time? Well, we borrow by pushing it into the next project time horizon, and so we tend to always be behind, and this will pick up over time and get even worse. The second lender of choice are other people, the relationships that we have with others. We tend to put off critical engagements, important meetings, or even more importantly, personal obligations like date night or reading to children or spending time on the phone with significant others or engaging with others in good conversation, because we're just too busy. And so we borrow from our relationships, borrow future capital from our relationships in order to meet our time commitments today. Finally, we tend to borrow from ourselves. That means that we don't sleep enough. We stay up late because we're working hard on projects to get them in on time or just slightly late. We fail to exercise. We eat too much fast food. And all of these things are ways that we borrow time from the future to make up what we need today. But time can also be saved. You can certainly think of time-saving things like dishwashers and smartphones that make us far more efficient in what we do. But what I'm talking about are investments of time. And you can think back to where you borrow time. Particularly think about investments in relationships. That if you invest now in date night or vacations or weekend activities or positive conversations with people, you actually build that emotional bank account so that if you have to draw down later, you're able to do so. We also invest in ourselves by things like sleeping enough, eating right, and getting enough exercise. So time is like money in the final sense that it always can be borrowed or saved with interest. And the interest is stress and quality. So when we find ourselves borrowing from the future, one of the first things we notice is that our stress levels go up and the quality of our life tends to go down. When we're able to save time, conversely, we find that stress goes down and the quality of our life goes up. So time is in fact like money. And let's talk now about how you can use your existing time better, how you can get that day planner to give you even more productivity in those 24 hours. The first thing to do is try to create greater focus in your life. If you think about productivity as the time spent on an activity times the energy or focus dedicated to that activity, you can see where you can improve your focus. So imagine that you're completing a project that requires 30 units to get done, and those units might be 30 hours at 1 unit of energy, or 15 hours at 2 units of energy, or 10 hours at 3 units of energy. Now imagine if you can get that job done in 5 hours with 6 units of energy. And the way that you do that is you arrange your tactical task life so that when you are working, you are all in. Your cell phone might be off, you're not playing free cell or looking at videos on YouTube, you're not booking a flight, and you're certainly trying to use your time the most effectively as possible. And remember, the key here, you're trying to do short bursts of really high energy activity to get that greater focus and improve productivity. Secondly, and we've talked about this briefly before, is the concept of cycle matching. You all read an article in LeBaron's class about how to manage your energy, not your time. That has to do with cycle matching. Figure out the time of day when you're at your best. For me, it's in the morning. And then you do not your hardest work, but your most important work. That which is truly mission critical for pushing ahead your business, your career, or your life. When you match your time cycle with the importance of the events that you're going on and the activities that you're engaging in, you'll find that you're using your time much better. And what do you do when you're not at your best? Well, that's when you catch up on email. That's when you go to the store. That's when you do your laundry and other things like that. So cycle matching is a powerful way to use existing time better. Finally, a key to using existing time better is unstructured time. Now that may seem like the antithesis of productivity, because what you're really trying to do in productivity is use your time every minute as wisely as you can. But let's look at what Jeff Weiner, who is the CEO and founder of LinkedIn, talks about when he says the importance of scheduling nothing. So Weiner noted that as his business grew, that his work with people changed from managing to coaching, and his work as a leader moved from tactical implementation to strategy formulation. What he found out really quickly is that coaching and strategizing are time-intensive activities. So what Weiner will do on a weekly basis is he'll block out 60 to 90-minute chunks where he simply will have nothing. Now, these aren't just buffers to catch up on email or phone, or play phone tag with people. This is his time to really think. So let's see what he has to say about thinking strategically. He says the same can be said of the transition from tactical execution to thinking strategically. There will always be a need to get things done and knock another to-do item off the list. However, as the company grows larger, as the breadth and depth of your initiatives expand, and as the competitive and technological landscape continues to shift at an accelerating rate, you will require more time than ever before just to think. Think about what the company will look like in 3 to 5 years. Think about the best way to improve an already popular product or address an unmet customer need. Think about how you can widen a competitive advantage or close a competitive gap. The thinking, if done properly, requires uninterrupted focus, thoroughly developing and questioning assumptions, synthesizing all of the data, information, and knowledge that's incessantly coming your way, connecting dots, bouncing ideas off of trusted colleagues, and iterating through multiple scenarios. In other words, it takes time. And that time will only be available if you carve it out for yourself. So what Wiener has done is he's been able to create big blocks of this space intentionally left blank that allows him to coach people, that allows him to think strategically, and use his time most effectively. So let's move on to learning to manage attention. The key to learning to manage attention is to learn to live in the holy present. And Elder Maxwell always used to talk about the holy present as the here and now, the only time when we can actually do work. For tomorrow is yet to come and yesterday is gone, but the only day that we have to work out our salvation or to move ahead in our career or to forward relationships is to live in the holy present. So let me suggest several ways that you can learn to live in the holy present. First, meditation. There's a movement today called mindfulness, which is all about meditating to get your body and your mind to focus on nothing but the here and now, to abandon the future, to abandon the past, and to totally concentrate on where you are. So the picture I've chosen for this is a pair of running shoes, because for me, that's how I meditate. When I'm doing my best running, I'm running at a pace where my body and my mind is totally focused on running. My mind is focused on pace, making sure my heart rate is at the right speed, making sure that my form is good, and my body is adhering to what my mind is telling it to do, and I'm not thinking about what's coming up tomorrow, or how poorly I did yesterday, or how well I did yesterday. So meditation is a powerful way to learn to live in the present. Crafts and hobbies are another excellent way. Think about detail hobbies like calligraphy, or drawing, or painting, or woodworking, or quilting. Anything that requires an attention to detail, while it provides you both a break from your daily life, it also flexes and exercises those focus muscles because you have to dive deeply into the details to make crafts and hobbies work. Next, let's talk about date night. Most of us can think of a date night where we didn't pay attention, where we weren't really living in the present with our date. We were either focused on the past or the future, and almost always those dates were at best suboptimal and at worst complete disasters. So dating is a great way, whether you're married, single, or any flavor, to focus your attention and your mind on the present, being with one other person and being completely there for them and present for them. Next, let's talk about rituals. Rituals have two key components that help us manage our attention. First, a ritual is the same every time, so we don't have to wonder what's going to happen. We can totally focus in to the purpose of the ritual. Secondly, rituals are often not just about managing our attention on living in the holy present, but in transcending us to a sacred holy present. For example, I've chosen the LDS sacrament as a way of thinking about that. And if you think about the sacrament, what we're invited to do is for 10 minutes each Sunday to totally focus our attention on the Savior and his atoning sacrifice and what it means for us and what it was for him. That's a way not only to spiritually enable growth and progress, but also to master paying attention to where we are right now. And finally, let's talk about gratitude. Gratitude is a wonderful way to manage attention and focus on the present because gratitude entails two very particular things. Number one, acknowledging that good things are coming to us, which requires that we're paying attention, that we're seeing, that we're acknowledging the good things that are happening in our lives. And number two, recognizing the source of that good, whether it's a blessing from God, whether it's someone else stepping in and helping you in your life. If we're paying attention to what's happening right now, we both acknowledge good things that are happening to us and we're able to recognize the individuals or the actions that are bringing about those good things. So gratitude is a powerful way to manage attention. So now let's talk about managing capacity. One of my great thoughts about managing capacity comes from a talk by Elder David A. Bednar of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Elder Bednar describes the following incident. He said, "Several years ago, I spent a Sunday afternoon with Elder Hales in his home as he was recovering from a serious illness. At one point, I asked Elder Hales, 'You have been a successful husband, father, athlete, pilot, business executive, and church leader. What lessons have you learned as you have grown older and have been constrained by decreased physical capacity?' Elder Hales paused for a moment and responded, 'When you cannot do what you have always done, then you only do what matters most.' Elder Bednar concludes, 'I was struck by the simplicity and comprehensiveness of his answer.' So the key to managing our capacity is to focus on and do those things that matter most. So how do we solve the capacity problem? Well, if you've listened to this discussion, one of the things you might be thinking is, wow, if I can learn to manage my time really effectively and super productively, and if I can learn how to be detailed and focused and pay attention to what's going on in the present, what I can actually do is expand the size of my plate so that I can fit more things on, or all the things that I'm doing I can do better, and I can just be more productive. So what I can do is I can actually do more. Now, I love this picture of Ricky Gervais, who's juggling, because a student many years ago noted that while he has a lot of balls in the air, he's not really doing anything sophisticated or anything artistic as juggling. He's just keeping a lot of balls in the air. And have you ever found that when you have a number of balls in the air, that little red one that's landing in his hand, your goal becomes, how can I get that ball off my plate as quickly as possible so I can be ready for the next ball that's about to drop in? Sounds great for juggling, but think about projects. Think about relationships. Is that really the way that we want to live our lives? And so the key isn't doing more. The key is to remember that less is more. So I've chosen a surgeon's scalpel because what we need to do is go through the projects in our lives, all the things that we're doing, and ask ourselves which ones are truly worth it, which ones are mission critical. So it's not about just being more productive so we can do more. It's about being productive so we can do the right things. It's about paying attention to the right things, not just paying attention to more things. So that's how we manage the capacity problem. So slack equals freedom, and freedom equals agency, and agency equals the ability to make choices. So how does slack improve our agency and our decision making? If we can learn to manage our time more effectively and eliminate the time poverty in our lives, that will give us the space, the unstructured time to think strategically, to take deep breaths, to really ponder what we're doing. If we can learn to overcome our attention poverty, we can have the ability to gather great data, to look for insight, to probe deeply, to gather a deep and rich understanding of the problem that we're trying to make a decision around. And if we've regulated our lives so that we have adequate capacity, but we're not overly filled, that'll give us joy, because the things that remain on our plate are the things that really matter. And we'll also live a life of meaning and contribution, where we know that our life is driven by an overarching purpose and an overarching mission. So I would encourage you at this critical time in your lives, when you're making many really important decisions, to look for areas where you can eliminate time poverty, where you can eliminate attention poverty, and where you can eliminate capacity poverty, so that you can build more slack in your life and make better decisions.